And Chicago, we have to help her win. Because we know that Donald Trump would sell this country for $1 if it meant lining his own pockets and greasing the palms of his Wall Street friends.
So imagine this, live television, the lights, the cameras, and suddenly the air goes heavy because Ana Kasparian, someone who's built her career defending progressive voices, someone who has often aligned herself with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, did the unthinkable. She turned the spotlight directly on AOC.
This bill is a deal with the devil. President Trump, you're either being lied to or you are lying to the American people.
So it seems like, for the most part, the Democratic Party is listening to Biden. AOC aside, earlier in the show, we were talking about Hakeem Jeffries, how he was basically keeping his powder dry until he kind of felt the temperature in the room to figure out where most elected Democrats stand on the issue of Biden potentially stepping down from this race. Well, he has now come out with a statement and he's sharing what he thinks about Biden remaining in the race. Let's watch.
You support Joe Biden.
And what she revealed left everyone stunned. This wasn't a slip. It wasn't an offhand remark. This was a deliberate, cutting exposure of what Kasparian called AOC's darkest secret, the side of her political career that's been whispered about but never said aloud on mainstream platforms. And to have it come from Kasparian?
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez told her fellow Democrats that, she might stop supporting primary challengers to Democratic incumbents in her attempt to chair the House Oversight Committee. Now, the reporting comes from Politico, which cited 3 people familiar with her remarks. So how well did that strategy work out for her?
That's what made it seismic. The audience froze as Ana shifted from praise to piercing critique, calling out the hypocrisy, the broken promises, the carefully curated image that AOC has used to skyrocket into the political spotlight. She pulled back the curtain on how behind the scenes, the narrative doesn't always match the reality. And as she said it, you could see the shock ripple through the panel, through the viewers, through the entire broadcast. And AOC, she wasn't ready. She wasn't expecting this. The confident smile slipped, the polished rhetoric faltered, because this wasn't coming from a political opponent. This was coming from someone who had been on her side, someone who knew the playbook, someone who wasn't afraid anymore to say what others wouldn't. Kasparian didn't just raise questions. She dropped specifics, pointing to decisions AOC made that contradicted her public image, pointing to relationships with donors, insiders, and political machinery that her base would never want to admit she's tied to. It was raw, it was unfiltered, and it was live, which meant no handlers could swoop in, no editors could cut it. It was there for the world to see. And in that moment, the myth of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as the untouchable progressive darling cracked. Because when the criticism comes from the inside, from someone with credibility in the same movement, it's harder to spin, harder to dismiss, harder to erase. What Kasparian did wasn't just commentary. It was a rupture, a betrayal, a shocking unveiling that has already set off shockwaves in political circles. Because if this is what insiders are starting to say on air, imagine what's being said behind closed doors. So here's where everything boiled over, because Ana Kasparian didn't stop at vague criticism. She went straight into the heart of the issue, laying out what she called the undeniable truth about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a truth that progressives have quietly ignored and critics have long suspected. Kasparian exposed how AOC, who built her reputation on being the outsider, the bartender-turned-politician who would stand up against the establishment, has slowly but surely become a part of the very machine she once promised to dismantle. Ana pointed to donations, corporate ties, and quiet backroom deals that don't align with the public image of the fearless rebel fighting for the people. She brought up the votes, the compromises, the moments where AOC campaigned on one thing, but delivered something very different once the cameras weren't rolling. And for progressives watching, it felt like betrayal being spoken out loud. Live with no hesitation. And then came the hardest blow. Ana questioned whether AOC has been more focused on brand building, social media clout, and celebrity status than on the hard, messy work of legislating and delivering for her district. She framed it not as a smear, but as a sobering reality check, one that cut deep because it came from someone who had once cheered AOC's rise. The reaction in the room was electric. You could almost feel the crackle through the screen. OC visibly tense, struggling to maintain composure, insisting she was fighting the good fight, but her words sounded rehearsed, defensive, and the more she pushed back, the more Kasparian's points landed because the evidence was right there and the mask was slipping in real time. And here's the conclusion, because what this moment really revealed is bigger than just AOC. It's about the cycle of politics itself, how movements built on authenticity and disruption can get swallowed by the system they enter, and how even the brightest stars can dim when power and pressure collide. Kasparian shattered the illusion on live television, showing millions that the progressive darling wasn't immune to the compromises, the hypocrisy, and the contradictions that plague Washington. And in doing so, she didn't just expose AOC. She exposed the fragility of the entire movement that built her up. By the time the segment ended, AOC's image wasn't untouchable anymore. Her base wasn't as sure as they were the day before, and her critics had fresh ammunition, all thanks to Kasparian, who dared to say what others whispered, live, with no turning back. And that's why this moment will be remembered. Not as just another TV clash, but as the day the truth slipped out and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez carefully built armor crack for the whole world to see.